Intersecting Media presents.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
The next thing in late night talk.
Here we go.
While you're working, eating, and playing, he's watching.
It'll be like O10.
Keeping you informed.
Thank you.
Jason Page.
Demented and sad, but social.
Covering all the day's news from a studio somewhere in Southeast Asia.
Worldwide!
And talking about it with you.
Blah, blah, blah.
You're Up Late with Jason Page.
Hoo-ah!
Or up early.
Good morning.
But just stay up.
It is time.
Here's Jason.
All right, great to have you with us this 27th of January 2021. Up Late with Jason Page. If people only could see. If people could only see the insanity that sometimes ensues right before this show starts. We had a big technical hiccup literally seconds before the show started. The software that we use to broadcast the program is this platform called OBS. And OBS decided today it was just going to crash. Right as the show was starting. Every time we'd open it, crash. But it's okay. We got it worked out, and just in the nick of time to be able to bring you this glorious program. And now another one of my programs on my Mac won't open. It's a comedy of errors. What are you going to do? I am Jason, as Chad Erickson so kindly pointed out to you in the open. I decided to do something a little different. There are days where I'll do one guest, two guests, and then there's days where I just want to talk, or I just want to talk about the news. Hello, Don. I just want to talk with you guys and be interactive. There's days where I think guests provide great insight into big stories, and then there's days where I just think we can have a dialogue back and forth about serious stuff and about not so serious stuff. Sometimes it's both. In my case, it's more the not so serious stuff today, but there's a few interesting things that I want to get to. If I said radicalist movement, if I said terrorism from within, if I said a teenager was arrested and charged with the threat of terror, was going to go and use a machete in a mosque, you'd think of places like, obviously, the United States, which does have a radicalized element. You'd think about Europe. You'd think about the Middle East. Maybe you'd even think about Russia. We know what happened in New Zealand. The last place you would come up with for a plot like this is Singapore, because it doesn't happen here. And I was fascinated when a friend of mine, who is a journalist here, decided to pass along a story to me yesterday about a 16-year-old being arrested in Singapore, India-born, comes to Singapore, 16 years old, and security officials here were able to thwart what they assumed to have been a plot to terrorize mosques here, Muslim mosques. Now, we would be talking about somebody going in with a machete and hacking people up. He had 2 notes that he had already written up, told authorities he either planned to carry out the event and be killed by police, or he would be captured before. Thankfully, they captured him before. And in a country like Singapore, where it is a state with a lot of surveillance, there's no getting around that, this is one of the advantages to that kind of surveillance. They were able to be proactive and thwart this before it ever happened and avoid what would have been one of the worst, if not the worst, terrorist tragedy that this country has had to endure. But it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I think of Singapore as one of the safest places in the world. It certainly is to me one of the safest places in the world. I walk around the streets here, no guns, no gun violence. I go into a movie theater. I don't have to worry, where's the nearest exit if a gunman walks in. You take those things for granted because in the United States, for years now, we're at the point where it's become secondhand nature, at least if you really have your head screwed on straight. If you go into a restaurant, you're like, okay, where am I sitting? Where's the nearest exit? And if somebody should come in and open fire, where am I going? How am I getting out? What's my escape plan? You think about those things in the United States every single day. And when I tell that to people here in Singapore, they can't believe it. They can't fathom what that is like. Same thing going into a movie theater or a convenience store. Where am I going in the case that somebody walks in with a gun and holds up the joint? In Singapore, they probably take it for granted on some level that they don't have to think about that. Whereas in the U.S., we take for granted that we do have to think about it. In a place like Singapore, they probably take for granted they don't have to think about that. You don't have to get onto the MRT, which is their version of the subway. You don't have to get on the MRT and think about where am I going if somebody comes onto this subway and starts to shoot it up? How am I getting out? How am I going to be safe? They don't ever have to think about that here. The worst thing they have to think about is the MRT taking 7 minutes instead of 4. Because every other one comes about 4 minutes. And the prices are insanely cheap to ride public transportation here. They don't have to think about those things. So a story like this in Singapore, where you're finding out that somebody had this alleged plot to terrorize the country, to carry out this heinous plan, it's a foreign concept, I think, to a lot of people here, because it just doesn't occur. So kudos to the Singaporean government. We'll find out more, I'm sure, in the days ahead about exactly what this 16-year-old was up to. What were you doing when you were 16? I was a bat boy for a minor league baseball team. I certainly wasn't filled with radical ideology that was making me think about going and shooting up a mosque. The worst thing I was figuring out was how to not get a wedgie when I went into school the next day. I mean, seriously. But it's rather interesting. So that was a really fascinating story to me coming out of Singapore earlier today. So, as I said, I want to get into a bunch of different topics today, and I want you guys to sort of play along with me and weigh in on some of those topics of the day, because there's a lot to sort of dissect and get into as it relates to the big news items of the day. As I was planning for the show today, I was fascinated reading this article, and it's a long read. I tweeted it out on my Twitter feed at the back page. A lot of people don't know what short selling is. A lot of people don't know the ins and outs of everything that happens on Wall Street, hedge funds, things of that nature. You know, you have a 401k at work. You go, you get your money taken out of your check, it goes somewhere, and someday it's going to be worth a lot more, and you can take it out, and it'll help you retire, or to help you buy a home if you decide to take it out early, or whatever. Well, one group of online sort of rebels, if you will, in the world of Reddit, have decided to take on the hedge funds, and they've done it to the tune of $5 billion with a B dollars so far. $5 billion. These hedge funds have suffered in losses as a result of short selling, basically betting on GameStop. A lot of you may know GameStop. If you don't play video games, you buy them for your kids. If you do play video games, you know GameStop all too well. You're going in there, trading them in, buying new ones, buying your PS4, PS5, your Nintendo Switch, whatever it may be. You know what GameStop is. Everybody knows what GameStop is in the U.S. I don't know if it's an international company. They don't have one here in Singapore per se. But I don't know if it's international, but it's certainly one of the largest gaming stores in all of the world. Well, at one point, their stock was like 40 cents. It's now in the area, and I don't have today's update on it, but it's now in the area of about $300 per share. And this is a result of this Reddit group that has jumped in and decided to drive up the price, buy up all the stock, and give this huge infusion of cash into GameStop. But at the same time, the Wall Street hedge funds, the short sellers who decided they were going to buy it low and wait for it to completely tank and then scoop it up again and buy it when it's completely low, well, they've gotten screwed, as I said, to the tune of about $5 billion with a B dollars. So now you've got a situation where hedge funds, which aren't playing with their money, they're playing with your money, are in danger of going bankrupt. Now Janet Yellen, Secretary of the Fed, is looking into it. The Biden administration's up to speed on it. Elizabeth Warren's talking about it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who will talk about anything if you put a mic in front of her face, she's starting to talk about it. Everybody is starting to talk about this war between vigilante day traders, if you will, on Reddit and Wall Street hedge funds. And this is going to be fascinating to watch. It's a developing story, and not a lot of the 24/7 news talk networks, your CNNs, your MSNBCs, your Fox News, they're not talking about it because it's a little inside, it's a little insider sort of story, and a lot of America probably wouldn't even understand it. It took me reading this lengthy article from Vice, and an author by the name of Jason Kebler wrote the story. I want to get him on to talk about it, to sort of help me understand what short selling is, what these people on Reddit are doing to drive up the price. Again, $300 per share for GameStop. These tiny little video game stores in your malls next to the, Aldo, next to Uniqlo, next to the Piercing Pagoda, is now $300 per share. And there's some people that think it's going to keep going up. And these short sellers that are within these hedge funds are going to lose even more money. And again, not their money, your money. So if you weren't paying attention to this, you might want to start, because it's a story that I think is going to gain some traction in the days ahead. And I don't know if people are going to, if Washington's going to have to intervene. I don't know how they could, because what the people on Reddit are doing is completely legal. Let me know. Do you invest? Are you investing in Wall Street? Are you invested in Bitcoin? Are you invested in the stock market? I'm not talking about your generic 401ks where the money's just going away and one day it'll be worth more. I'm not talking about that. Are you investing yourself into the market? My partner and I have had this conversation about, what do we want to do with our money? Now we're in our 40s. Yeah, we have real estate. We own a home, but what are we going to do with our money? It's a conversation I think a lot of people are having. Again, only about 40 or 50% of America is invested in the stock market. So when you only have 40 to 50% invested, that means half the country's not in the game. They don't have any skin in the game. But everybody's looking to try and sort of get rich these days. Everybody's looking to try and figure out a way to get ahead, especially in these times where the economy for most of America isn't that great. Top 10%? Sure, things are fine. Top 20% even. Things are all right. But if you're in that 60% and down, how good is the economy for you right now? How good is the economy coming out of the Trump administration, entering the Biden administration? And I'm not talking about just because of COVID. How much did the tax relief from the Trump administration really help you? How much did it really impact your day-to-day life? Don't talk to me about gas prices. The president doesn't control gas prices. I always hear people, well, see, Biden's in office. Gas prices have gone up. Educate yourself. Presidents aren't in charge of gas prices. Simple Google search. The internet doesn't lie. Doesn't forget either. Go and check it out. I'll be interested to see how many people are heavily engaged these days in the stock market. So I was going through a number of items as we were preparing to do the show today, because like I said, I just wanted to basically talk about a number of different topics and get your guys' thoughts on it as we sort of work through the program. I'm just scrolling through some of my items that I wanted to sort of go through. I had as I mentioned before the show, we had an incident with a technical issue with the filming software that we use here that you're watching me through. Well, that same issue that I had has taken all of my topics, which I had in Pages in my MacBook, and now every time I open Pages in my MacBook, it won't open. It's crashing upon opening it. So I don't have the opportunity, unfortunately, to look at my list of topics. I have to do some of this off of memory. All right, here's what I'm going to do. Quick break. I'll come back. I'll get Pages fixed because I've got a whole bunch of different things I want to get into here over the next 40 minutes. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat room. If you're not following us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, at the back page, you can follow me there. Go and do that right now. Send us your questions. I'll be right back. Lots more to do as we continue Up Late with Jason Page on this Thursday. It is Thursday. We welcome you back up late with Jason Page on this Thursday. Much appreciated for you bearing with me as I was working through some technical issues today as we started the show, and then some more technical issues as we've kind of been going through the program as well. A quick item from sports, although I don't know if quick is exactly the way to approach a story that is as delicate as this one. When I was prepping for the show last night and getting ready for it today, I've seen a lot of conversation regarding the story of Chad Wheeler. If you don't know who he is, that's okay. Most people know. He's an offensive tackle, now formerly with the Seattle Seahawks, who was arrested on felony domestic battery and domestic assault charges for a manic episode, it's being called, involving his girlfriend, where he beat her basically to within inches of her life. In fact, he beat her so badly that when she eventually regained consciousness, he looked at her and, according to the victim's statement, said, "Wow, you're alive?" That's how badly he beat her, all for reportedly not bowing to him. He demanded that she bow to him. He didn't. She didn't. And the 6'7", 310-pound, now former offensive lineman, beat her to a pulp, essentially. So much of the coverage around this story, much of the talk around social media regarding this story was the fact that this didn't get the attention that the Ray Rice story got, 6 years ago? 7 years ago? Remember Ray Rice went through the ringer, and rightly so, for beating his then girlfriend, later fiance, now wife, in a New Jersey or Pennsylvania, I think it was, hotel elevator. Video emerged of the incident. The NFL took action. He never played again in the league, and was basically cast out of society for a number of years. So now, people who say, well, we never forgave Ray Rice, were running to say, why is this player's story, why is this not being plastered all over the news? Because it wasn't being covered with the same vigor and the same intensity that the Ray Rice story was being covered. Now, I have an initial reaction to these sorts of stories. I have an initial knee-jerk reaction. Everybody's saying it's racism. It's because he's white. It's because, this reason or that reason. It's not getting covered the same way Ray Rice did. And my knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, let's step back and look at this logically. Why is it not being covered? Instead of what I would sometimes consider to be the simplistic answer of, well, it has to be racism. It's got to be because he's white. I tend to take a step back from these things. And by the way, that may be completely true. I don't dismiss that for a second. But I tend to take a step back and say, okay, let's examine some other factors of why this isn't being covered the same way. Ray Rice, Pro Bowl running back, part of a Super Bowl winning franchise in the Ravens, a perennial 1,000-yard rusher, very well known in the game, offensive player, somebody you have in your fantasy lineups all the time, prominent guy. If I put Chad Wheeler in a lineup with 4 other guys that were 6'7" and 310 pounds, you couldn't tell me who Chad Wheeler was, and you know it. You don't lie. You don't know who Chad Wheeler is. Factor 1. He's played in the league for 3 years. I think he's played a total of 31 games. Only 6 this past season with the Seahawks. Prior to that, he spent 2 seasons with the Giants, I believe, in 2017 and 2018. That's his NFL experience. Offensive lineman. Can we say journeyman? Not a guy, household name. You don't know who he is. Because of that, it doesn't carry the same gravitas that a name like Ray Rice does. Again, stepping back, 20,000-foot view, not in the moment. Take a deep breath. What I'm saying is 100% accurate. There isn't the same shock and awe, to use a lack of better phrase. There isn't that same shock and awe when I say the name Chad Wheeler as if I say the name Ray Rice. Just as if I was to say, the last guy at the end of an NBA bench has been arrested for domestic violence, versus if I said Jimmy Butler or LeBron James, the biggest star. But I wouldn't say LeBron James because that's obviously not on the level of Ray Rice. But if I said Jimmy Butler, or if I said C.J. McCollum of the Portland Trailblazers, or any number of other players, if I said those names, you're going to pay attention to the story far more. And again, some of this is the media's need to sensationalize stories that shouldn't be necessarily sensationalized. It's a strange noise coming from in our studio. Hold on. Oh, it's raining outside. Sorry. There's this need sometimes to sensationalize stories because of the name power involved. Chad Wheeler's not a name. Now, look, this guy's probably played his last NFL game. He's a fringe player as it is. Now he's been busted for domestic violence. He's never going to play in the league again. And that's what the cry was on social media on Wednesday, was he should never play in the league again. He should be shunned from society. All of which, on some level, is true. Absolutely. But I don't necessarily think it's always rational to rush to the conclusion that it's race-related. Again, I understand through some people's prism why they would think that. I think there's enough examples out there that could lead you to that conclusion. But I also think some of it is the media saying, well, people don't care about this guy because he's a nobody player. He's a journeyman offensive lineman. Why are we going to give this story that much attention? There's so many other things we could be covering, as opposed to it being a star. And again, that is something you can place blame on the media for if you want to do so. But to straight away say racism? No. I think it's more the need. I mean, what do you see in the media every night? Let's think about sports media. What do you see on SportsCenter every night? Who gets covered? The stars. What teams get covered? The stars. What sports get covered? The ones with the biggest stars. Right? Every night. I mean, there's a term for it. I won't use it because it's kind of crude, and I'll get an explicit rating. But there's a reason why the highlights you see during games at night, or during SportsCenter at night, there's a reason why stories are covered the way they are, why certain topics are covered the way they are. And it's simple. Name, power, sells. Now, the gambling element has started to change the way sports gets covered on TV, and that's another topic for another time. But as it relates to this Chad Wheeler story, if everybody takes a step back from the keyboard, I used to have a boss that would say that. When I'd get mad about something, he'd say, Jay, take a step back from the keyboard. I'm saying take a step back from the keyboard, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, all right, why is this being covered the way? Instead of jumping to the most logical conclusion, one guy's white, one guy's black, which, again, could have played a role in this. I tend to say there's probably other, more, and in some cases more nefarious reasons, such as the guy's not a big name. And lost in all of this is this poor woman, this victim that was beaten to within inches of her life, that's now recovering from this awful incident. Chad Wheeler says through Twitter that he's been released on a $400,000 bond. He said he's stepping away from football. Sorry, Chad, that's not going to be your choice anyway. He is stepping away from football, and he's going to get help to never pose a threat to another person. Truly is ashamed. So we'll see what happens. There's one other question, though, when I see these stories. And I asked this question in the case of Aaron Hernandez back when I was doing my radio show back in the day. There's a really interesting question to ask when it comes to a story like Chad Wheeler. Just as there is in the case of Aaron Hernandez, the former Patriot player, killed himself in jail after he was convicted, murder charges, shooting incident, this whole thing. What did the Seahawks know about Chad Wheeler? What did the New York Giants, who employed him for 2 seasons, know about Chad Wheeler? You see all the work these NFL teams do. And before anybody says, well, how could an NFL team possibly know that blah, 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 blah. Think about the combine every year. Think about the NFL draft and everything that goes into scouting players that these teams bring into the league. They put these players through every sort of battery and test imaginable. They interview them. They ask them questions. They have the Wonderlic score. They ask very personal probing questions. They have security details that are looking at everything involving these players. Are you telling me all of that stops once they come into the league and play for a team? Come on. Most of these organizations, if not all of them, have former police officers and detectives working for them. They know damn well what all these players are doing in their spare time. How did Chad Wheeler just go from being unknown offensive tackle, playing for the Giants, playing for the Seahawks, who just one day out of the blue decides to beat this woman to within inches of her life? And you're telling me nobody in the Seahawks organization knew anything? Nobody in the Giants organization knew anything? I call BS. I call BS. And I said the same thing when it came to Aaron Hernandez and the Patriots. I'll say the same thing when it comes to Chad Wheeler. How did the Patriots not know about the gang ties of Aaron Hernandez? Stop it. The most amateur reporters knew about Aaron Hernandez's gang ties. And Bob Kraft's going to wash his hands and say, oh, we didn't know anything. Bill Belichick's going to say, oh, we're getting ready for Cincinnati. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You'd have to ignore reality in order to believe that is the case. You would have to be ignoring reality to think that nobody on the Patriots knew anything about the private life of Aaron Hernandez. Nobody on the Seahawks or Giants knew anything going on in the life of Chad Wheeler. You know how much time these players spend together? Per week, per month, per season? Come on. Everybody knows that something is going on. All right. How many times, I know I am guilty of this, and we were talking about tech issues today that we were having with my laptop as we were getting ready to start the show. How many times do you get an alert on your iPhone that says, hey, you should update your iPhone's iOS. Or your iPad. Hey, you should update your iPad's iOS. How many of you, like me, simply look at that alert that pops up on your phone and swipe up, make it disappear, and then you don't update your iPhone for 2, 3, 4 weeks? I've been guilty of it on many occasions. Well, I'm going to tell you why, if you've gotten an alert on your iPhone that says to update your device to the newly released iOS and iPad iOS 14.4, you should do it, and do it now. Apple put out a new warning this week telling people to immediately make this update, which, by the way, I haven't done yet. There are 3 big security flaws that may have already been exploited on your Apple device, your iPhone or your iPad. Apple crediting an anonymous researcher for finding the bugs, according to its support page. I know I've been guilty of this so many times. 3 security flaws. One of the vulnerabilities found is a malicious application which may be able to elevate privileges in kernel, which is the framework for Apple's operating system. Apple said the issue was addressed in the new update with improved locking. 2 other vulnerabilities were found in WebKit, a web browser engine used by Safari and other apps which may allow a remote attacker to potentially cause arbitrary code execution. What does this all mean? The security of your phone is at risk. The security flaws impact the iPhone 6S, and later the iPad Air 2, and later the iPad Mini 4, and later and the iPod Touch 7th generation. But it's still unclear to Apple who else may have been exploited. By the way, Apple shares $142 per share. It was down a little bit on Wednesday, but $142 a share. Hope you got it early. All right, I got one other thing that I want to get off my chest today. One other sort of personal thing that I want to get off my chest today. We're going to do that and a lot more as we continue. Up Late with Jason Page here on every social media platform. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook Live. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. welcome you back. Up Late with Jason Page on this Wednesday night in the U.S., Thursday afternoon in Singapore. So before I get to my pet peeve of the day, something that I experienced last night, and I'm curious if others have ever experienced this sort of thing when they go out to eat. I'll get to that in a second. But before I get to that, one of the most interesting things I'm kind of looking forward to in a, I guess, voyeuristic sort of way over the next several months and years is going to be the litany of books that come out that tell us what was really going on inside the Trump White House over the last four years, basically. And even maybe within the campaign in the year prior to when he was elected. But I'm sure a lot of that reporting's already taken place. But I'm fascinated, and I think it's going to be one of the things that's worth watching over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. The books that emerge that tell us the real story about what was taking place inside the Trump White House. We're already starting to get those sorts of things. We got them throughout the entire president's, time in the White House. Bob Woodward wrote a couple of books. People that served in the White House and quickly left wrote their own books. Some went on to be talking heads. But you're going to see, I think, a number of different literary works that sort of get deep into what exactly was taking place over the last 4 years. And I was reminded of this today when I saw a story posted at thelist.com about a former best friend. Boy, who needs best friends like this, right? A former best friend of Ivanka Trump that is done a tell-all for Vanity Fair. Details about her expensive outfits, to her influence in the White House, to her presence on the campaign trail. So this former friend of Ivanka Trump, Lysandra Orstrom, wrote this in-depth article for Vanity Fair detailing their friendship they once shared and how it fizzled out. Apparently, Ivanka was the queen bee in middle school, according to this journalist, Lysandra Orstrom. She wrote in Vanity Fair, she met Ivanka in the 7th grade at one of Manhattan's premier all-girls schools, Chapin, whose alumni include Jackie Kennedy, and according to the writer, Ivanka ruled the halls. After spending the previous 4 years in social isolation in the suburbs, I was eager to land on the popular side of the classroom, ruled over by Ivanka and about 5 other wild, entitled, precocious preteens, Orstrom wrote. It was the grunge era, so we moshed around the classroom in performative angst, wearing our uniforms of green plaid kilts, tailored shorter the more popular you got, and stacked heel Steve Madden loafers as the dystopian walls or wails of Nirvana blared from a boombox. We wonder who exactly was in Ivanka's squad of reportedly entitled preteens, but we imagine the group, the story says, looked like the montage from Mean Girls. I'm not going to go through all the tawdry details of this story, but suffice it to say, if those are the stories we're getting now about various members of the Trump White House and the Trump inner circle, can you imagine the stuff that's going to come out in the days, weeks, and months ahead from people that actually worked inside this White House, people looking to repair their reputations as we go through the coming years, because there's a lot of reputations that need repairing. Kellyanne Conway is really the prime example, the poster child for all of this. Sarah Huckabee Sanders running for governor in Arkansas. A lot of people working to try and repair and rehabilitate their reputations in the post-Trump era. So anyway, just something to keep an eye on. All right, my pet peeve of the day. Went out to dinner last night with a friend of mine. The person who's helping me actually build my website, friend of mine named Cliff. Last name, not important. I mean, it's important to him and me, but not important to sharing the story. So we go out to eat last night at a place I affectionately call Sushi Heaven. It's called Sushi Express here in Singapore. It's a carousel sort of environment. So you sit down at like a bar. It's basically bar seating style, and a carousel of sushi goes around on plates that are $1.50 each. Every plate is $1.50. And as the plates come around, you grab one, you eat it, you stack up the plates, they add it up at the end of the meal, and they give you your total. You go and pay at the register. One of my favorite places to go to, because I could try every kind of sushi. I only have to eat 1 or 2 bites of it, and I'm done. And I'll generally do about 14 or 15 plates in a visit. That sounds like a lot, but it's 30 pieces of various types of sushi or sashimi. So my friend Cliff and I went last night. We wanted to catch up over dinner. We get in line, quick line. Waitress walks us over to our table. Server walks us over to our table, sits us down, brings the green tea. I say, hey, a couple of miso soups, brings those over. And then this server puts a piece of paper down on the table and says, we have a 40-minute time limit. 40 minutes, you got to leave. Excuse me? I'm paying to eat your food, and you're telling me I can only do that in a specific amount of time? 40 minutes? You got to rush me to eat this sushi as fast as I can? 40 minutes is all I get to consume my meal? I was absolutely flabbergasted. And I know that some all-you-can-eat places in the U.S., like if you go for all-you-can-eat hot pot or all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue, if you sit down at a restaurant, they tell you in advance, look, you have a 90-minute limit or a 2-hour limit or an hour limit. That's fine. As long as I know it before I go to sit down, I can live with that. But 40 minutes to basically shovel down all the sushi you possibly can before we're going to throw your ass out and let somebody else sit down and do the same thing. I felt like I was cheated a bit. I'm not going to lie. I felt like I was cheated a bit. I'm curious if that's ever happened to any of you. 40 minutes. You don't even get time to talk to your friend when you're told, hey, you got 40 minutes to eat. Because all you have time to do is eat. Grab the plates, put them down, yada, yada, yada. I was very disappointed. If I had known that beforehand, I wouldn't have gone. In fact, I was super obnoxious when we were leaving the restaurant. When I got to the register, there was a line of people standing outside waiting to get into this place. It's a very popular spot. And I understand the idea of getting people in and out because you got to fill the tables. You want to make as much money as you can as a business. I completely appreciate that. Make it an hour. 40 minutes is way too short. Let alone the fact that 33 minutes into the meal, a member of the wait staff came over and said, okay, are you finishing up? I still got 7 minutes left. I got to run out the door. 33 minutes in, I've already got to settle up. So now it's not even 40 minutes, it's 33. No. Nope. Not buying it. But apparently that's what it's come to these days. You got to get them in, get them out, and get people their stuff. So when I got to the register, there was a long line of people standing outside waiting to get the next table. And I turned and looked at all of them. And in my loudest, most obnoxious American voice, I looked at all of them. I said, 40 minutes. Better eat it fast. You only get 40 minutes. And I'm sure some of them thought I was nuts. Obnoxious American just screaming gibberish inside this restaurant. 40 minutes. Crazy. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the food portion of the program. Tomorrow, I've got a fascinating food story that I want to tell you guys about, and a video that goes along with it. What might be one of the strangest combinations in a dessert that I've ever heard of in my life is taking place right now in one very popular fast food joint that you will definitely know in an interesting part of the world. I'll get to that tomorrow on the show. And hopefully I'll actually be able to get my story list up and be able to run through a lot more topics as we go through the program. Thank you for bearing with me today as we had some technical issues that we were obviously dealing with. I'm very appreciative for that. All right, that's going to wrap it up for Up Late on this Wednesday night / Thursday afternoon in Singapore. Thanks for hanging out. If you're not following us, go to Twitch, twitch.tv/intersecting media. I'm on Twitter at The Back Page. The Intersecting Media webpage is up, but it's not done, so I don't want to promote it too much. But you can go check it out if you want. The Intersecting Media podcast returns next week. Hey, Steve. So you'll be able to check that out. Hope you're feeling better, too, Steve, by the way. My good friend Steve Brandy is checking in on Facebook. Poor guy has just dealt with medical issues that no veteran who served this country should ever have to deal with. So I got Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, the Intersecting Media channel there. Go and follow it. Lots of great stuff we're going to be doing in the video realm and in the audio realm. So make sure to check out all of them. I think that's it. I'm going to go brave the elements. It's raining outside. Today's my fasting day, so I don't get to eat today. I'm doing this every other day fasting thing. So I eat one day, fast the next. I'm literally eating and fasting every other day. Normal day of food, next day fast. Normal day of food, next day fast. Trying to drop some weight. I gotta. Not as svelte as I was a year ago. So we got to do that. All right, I'll see you all back here on Thursday night / Friday afternoon for another edition of Up Late with Jason Page. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time.